Live from the heartland and the crossroads of America, it's Tony Katz Today.
Texas is not violating a Supreme Court decision. That's not what's happening. Texas is making a very, very clear statement. And that clear statement is, we're going to protect and defend ourselves, kitten. That's what's going to happen. We're going to do it. We're going to do it unabashedly. We're not going to apologize for it. We're not going to clear it with you. We're not interested if you like us. We're not interested if you're our friend. None of it matters. What matters is that we protect the nation. Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. And by the way, it is a conversation of protecting the nation while they're protecting themselves. Let's start where we need to start. And let's start with the case, the Supreme Court case ruling against Texas. What did they actually rule? Well, this starts, of course, long before that, with whether or not we're actually protecting the nation at the southern border. Is this administration doing anything to protect the country? Most of us would say absolutely not, and nowhere near enough. Absolutely not, and nowhere near enough. We have got an open, porous border. My time at the border, it's not been, for forever. I haven't been going for weeks and months and years. I've done one visit to the border, which makes it one more visit than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I put my hand in the Rio Grande, spoke to Border Patrol agents, spoke to people who work in the areas, understanding the problem and the level of insidiousness of the issue. I have much more to go in my own learning. But there is no doubt that the border is in a worse state today than it was under Donald Trump. To say otherwise is a maddening proposition. It would simply be a lie. And we hear these lies quite a bit. We get these lies from people like Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, had the audacity to go on and do an interview on CNN. And she wants you to believe that the border is not only secure, but it is Republicans getting in the way. Instead of a conversation of, here's the policy we'd like to put in place. Here's the policy we would like to see happen. Here it is, as clear as day. No. It's how Republicans are getting in the way of making things happen. It is Republicans who are keeping you from being safe. Of course, this is not true. Of course, this is not true. This is nowhere near true. As a matter of fact, we're all amazed that you're even having the conversation. And then we took a look at a watch and we said, oh, it's an election year. And all of a sudden, you've got the Democratic Party very, very concerned with the border. But they're not concerned with a solution and by the way, there's not one. It's multiple pieces. You're talking about border security. You're talking about border technology. You're talking about what's going on with actual border patrol. You're talking about where they put their time and focus and energy. You're talking about the labor side of it because you do need the workers. There is a humanitarian crisis when you talk about the sex trafficking and the human trafficking that's taking place. And here's how Karine Jean-Pierre wants to treat you.
It doesn't seem like they've gotten it. They now are allowed to cut down razor wire. Yeah. Some Democrats are saying the president needs to federalize the Texas National Guard.
So look,
that's something that could happen?
I mean, look, I'll say this. The Border Patrol agents are now, as you said, allowed to cut through the wire because of what the Supreme Court has laid out. It's unfortunate that we had to go there. It's unfortunate that there is a governor in Texas, Governor Abbott, who has politicized this issue of what's happening on the border. And it's not making people's lives safer. It's actually making it harder for law enforcement at the border to do their job. And so we have been very clear. We want to make sure we get something done at the border. That's why we've been having these conversations with Senate Republicans and Democrats for the past several weeks to come up with a bipartisan.
The past several weeks, not the past several years when this has been a problem, the past several weeks. Election season, everybody. Ain't it great? And is it not just one? I really should have a studio audience. I swear I really should. She wasn't kidding, by the way, about those people who think that there should be a federal takeover. This was Congressman Joaquin Castro. And he stated Governor Greg Abbott is using the Texas National Guard to obstruct and create chaos at the border. If Abbott is defying yesterday's Supreme Court ruling, POTUS, President of the United States, needs to establish sole federal control of the Texas National Guard now. Now, he's got a series of confused things going on there regarding the National Guard versus Texas State Guard. These are different entities. But go back to what it is Karine Jean-Pierre said, and this will go back to how we started. That Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is absolutely not defying the Supreme Court. The decision, a 5-4 decision, stated that the Biden administration can cut through the razor wire. Now, if you ask where I am on that decision, I would argue that I am not in favor of anything the Biden administration has done with the border. But as I was a guy who said during the Trump years, the president decides immigration policy, and I'm not interested in changing that unless there's some congressional action to change it. I won't listen to judges say Trump couldn't do X and Trump couldn't do Y, but Biden can do A, B, and C. This goes to the idea of DACA, for example. Here's Barack Obama with a pen, and he's like, all right, deferred action for childhood arrivals. We'll just change immigration policy like this. Donald Trump wants to change it and say, let's get rid of DACA. And some judge says no. With all due respect, that judge should be told to kiss off. Who cares what that judge has to say? That judge doesn't matter in the slightest. Tell that judge to go raise an army. The president, elected by the people, determines immigration policy, and I believe that to be true for the current president as well, even if I don't like what it is he's doing and I don't like him. And I don't. Even on a personal level, I just find him to be an abhorrent cat. The ruling said that the Border Patrol can cut through the razor wire. The ruling did not state that the Abbott administration in Texas could not add razor wire. Now, if you're like, well, Tony, with all due respect, calm yourself down. As the Sopranos would say, put a little fizzy water on your head and relax. You're wrong. The court said what it said. It did not stop Greg Abbott from protecting the state. As a matter of fact, Greg Abbott has been very clear that his plan is to protect the state. Here's his statement right here for all to read. It states, amongst other things, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and other visionaries who wrote the Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats, like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. This is why the framers included both Article 4, Section 4, which promises the federal government shall protect each state against invasion, and Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. Now, no one in America, no radio host in America has discussed Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution more than me. I want the credit where it is dang well deserved. No one has said it more than me. Article 4, Section 4 says that every state in the Union will be guaranteed a Republican form of government. And yes, that government will protect the states from invasion. It does not say it will protect the states from regulated armies where everyone's wearing the same uniform and marching like redcoats did. When you have single able-bodied males crossing the border, it's an invasion. When you have this.
If you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're going to know who I am. Very well.
And the question of whether or not that guy was a guy who spent 12 years in prison for trying to do arms trafficking in Azerbaijan, maybe being successful at it. That guy cannot be in the United States. Of course, you can consider that an invasion. Anybody who would make that level of threat, veiled or however you want to describe it, without question, the border is not safe. That can be seen as an invasion. As a matter of fact, I believe all of it can. But what about Article 1, Section 10? I like the way Greg Abbott's thinking here. I like the cut of his jib. As the expression goes, Article 1, Section 10. Oh, the Constitution is a fascinating document. Let me read it. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Kitten, let me tell you, that's pretty good stuff. What Greg Abbott is arguing is that certainly if you don't want to agree to this being an invasion, one can agree that there is imminent danger that will not allow of delay. And it is his responsibility, as per the Constitution of the United States of America, to protect not only his state, but the country. I believe this to be an absolutely winning argument. Not only a winning argument because I so believe it, but a winning argument because he is not acting from an emotional place. He laid it out, did Greg Abbott. He laid it out with clarity, utilizing the Constitution, utilizing his powers as a governor, and recognizing that states have rights. Because they do. States have rights. And there have been a lot of people backing him up. The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, putting out on X, enough is enough. Our southern border is in crisis thanks to the Biden administration's refusal to do their job. Greg Abbott and the state of Texas have our full support. Kristi Noem out of South Dakota. Greg Abbott is exactly right to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend itself. The Biden administration has created a national security crisis and put Americans in danger, writes Governor Noem. Their failure is an unconstitutional dereliction of duty. South Dakota has been proud, as she writes it, to help Governor Abbott's efforts to secure our border. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, I stand with Governor Abbott. The House will do everything in its power to back him up. The next step, holding the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, accountable. Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma. Oklahoma stands with Texas. Governor Gianforte of Montana. Governor Greg Abbott is doing what POTUS won't. By refusing to act, President Biden is inviting cartels, illegal drugs, and human trafficking into the United States. We must secure the southern border. Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. Virginia stands with Texas. Greg Abbott is doing the job Joe Biden and his border czar, that would be the Vice President Kamala Harris, refused to do to secure our border. The Biden administration has turned every state into a border state. We must stop the flow of fentanyl, save lives, and secure our southern border. And Governor Ron DeSantis, out of Florida. The Supreme Court is siding with the Biden administration against Texas by allowing the federal government to take down razor wire on the border. Texas is trying to enforce our laws and uphold our sovereignty, while the federal government is disregarding the law and ignoring its responsibility to protect our borders. What an upside-down world. Whether governors like it or don't like it, this is officially the litmus test. I'm not a litmus test guy, but you're not willing to make a statement as a governor here? You don't want to talk about the border? What about the idea of states' rights? You got to tell me there are governors who won't actually stand up for the rights of their state to be able to protect their citizens? In my state, Indiana, I've asked the question to Governor Eric Holcomb. We await his decision on this, and I keep checking out his feed here. I keep checking out his Twitter feed here to see where he is on the subject, to see if he has posted anything on the subject. I give it a little refresh right there, and nope. A lot of investment coming to the state of Indiana. I think you could be cheering that all you will and all you want, no problem at all. But no mention of the southern border. Huh. Well, that's going to be a problem. And certainly anybody running for governor in any state, this is a good question that's going to be asked. Greg Abbott is not violating the Supreme Court ruling. And after all, if he did, what could they do about it? I mean, that's a question you should ask yourself. It would take the Biden administration doing something about it. And what are they going to do about it? They can cut the razor wire and Greg Abbott can put it back up. Maybe the answer is policy and a recognition that borders matter and we need a border. And the people who want no borders, the rabid squad and the other progressives, need to be told to sit down. They're wrong, and they have to be told. And Greg Abbott is right, and governors should let him know that he's right. As for what my governor, Eric Holcomb's going to do, I ain't got a clue. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. One of the big stories from yesterday is how Jon Stewart is coming back. He's coming back to The Daily Show. He's going to be an executive producer, and he's going to be the host one day a week. All of a sudden, he's Rachel Maddow. Tony Katz. Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Find us on Rumble. Find us on YouTube. Find everything on X at TonyKatz.com. He's going to be the Monday host. They're going to have fill-in hosts, rotating cast, Tuesday through Thursday. And then I don't know what they're going to do on Friday. I guess that's their day of rest. Jon Stewart, undoubtedly, for his time at The Daily Show, for a generation, was where they got news. It was absolutely where they got news. No question about it. And then Jon Stewart left for a while, and he did some good things in terms of pushing for legislation. You can agree or disagree, but you know he was out there trying to get some things done. And then he started this show at HBO, The Problem with Jon Stewart. And in that show, you saw that this guy who was supposed to be clever and smarter than the room, and a man who had focus. He had wanted to be funny, focus on funny. He had turned into this ridiculous kind of concoction of progressivism and beta maleness. That's exactly correct. I mean, I couldn't come up with a better description than the description I just came up with. And that show did nothing. And that show went nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. So now that he comes back to The Daily Show, why am I to think that I'm going to get the same Jon Stewart that I had from The Daily Show? And I didn't agree with him there, but at least he was funny. We're not getting that guy. We're not getting this guy who is at the top of his game. We're not getting this guy who's got a strong mind and a strong sense of self. No, what we're going to get is this uber progressive, please like me guy. This show is not going to go anywhere, and this show will be off the air soon, right? So let's talk real incitement. And I come to you saying that having this conversation might very well get me in trouble with my stations. But my job, amongst other things, right? Be entertaining, be enjoyable, try and get people to come back and listen again tomorrow. I observe. It's kind of the gig, and see the thing that maybe somebody else hasn't seen. It's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. Maybe sometimes I can see around the corner a little bit better because this is what I focus on. Other people, they focus on their work. They're not focused on this. And so part of my job is to be thinking about the thing that other people aren't thinking about. Right? I kind of dig that gig. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Find everything going on at TonyKatz.com. I wanted to share with you a couple of things that have been happening in cable news and really get an understanding for how vicious MSNBC specifically and CNN included have become. If you want to keep arguing that Fox News is the problem, I'm not going to tell you Fox News handled everything regarding Dominion voting systems perfectly. That is not what I'm going to say. But how dare these networks claim a level of decency when they are the ones very clearly trying to engage a bit of inception and look for an action. Now, there's the standard stuff, which is the bigotry of Joy Reid, who is a bigot, and this regarding immigration.
And very quickly, this massive resistance, it sounds like the old Southerners who said that we will resist integration by any means necessary, that Chip Roy language. How does that read inside of the Latino community?
I mean, it's very simple. You know, if you're the Republican Party, you're allegedly the party of laws and order, and you're essentially telling local authorities to break the law. So I think once again, going into this image of, who is the party of law and order and who is the party for democracy, I think that's where we all have to highlight the hypocrisy, regardless of the politics. They're essentially telling people to break the law.
Yeah. A fantastic reporter, Paula Ramos. Please come back a lot. Thank you very much for being here.
No one is breaking the law when it comes to Texas. Governors supporting the law, supporting a border, supporting security is what should be happening. The Supreme Court decision stated that the Biden administration could cut through razor wire set up by the state of Texas. It does not preclude Texas from setting up razor wire. These are two very different things. But within the context of this conversation that Joy Reid was having with Hillary Clinton's former deputy of who gives a crap? You want to state that this is some kind of old school conversation? You think this is about keeping black kids out of a school? You're going to compare illegal immigration to freed slaves who were Americans who were living their lives? And if you offer public education, it should be offered to all? This is an argument that you want to make and you think has rationality? It has none. But if your objective is not rationality, but rather your objective is to foment the hate, the division, and to continue the claim, as radical as it is, that this party, this group of people, they are the danger, they are the threat. Well, bravo, Joy Reid. It is to this that we are seeing a serious issue. This continued push that the election of Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and an end to democracy. This was Vice President Kamala Harris.
November of 2024, binary. And on the other side, you've got someone who has said that if he were back in office, he would weaponize the Department of Justice. Someone who has openly applauded insurrectionists as patriots. Someone who has said that they will go after their political enemies and applauds dictators, indicating that he would be one. So let's be really clear about what's at stake. And then, yes, of course, there is then a desire that let's get out there because we can't lose this democracy. We can't.
So to listen to a progressive talk about, oh my gosh, somebody else might weaponize the DOJ. They can't do that. Only we can weaponize the DOJ. And with a straight face. With a straight face, Kamala Harris does this. But more to it, I mean, and the whole thing can make you sick to your stomach, is this whole thing about democracy. Democracy is at stake. Democracy is at issue. Democracy is on the line. Are we not going to talk about what absolutely violent conversation that is? To make a claim that there is a 50% of the country that doesn't believe in democracy? Never mind that we're a republic. They don't believe in democracy? They don't believe in keeping the country? No, they're the ones who absolutely want to keep the country. You're the ones who have open borders. But this talk, when the right talks, it should always talk in terms of policy. The left should too, but the left always goes to this radicalness. And not only the radicalness of, if you elect these people, the whole country's going to end. They purposefully push and want the dehumanizing. This is James Carville. Producer Jason, finger on the dump button, because I don't know. He's on MSNBC. Who knows what he might say? But just to make sure. Listen.
Exactly right. This is not a typical election. And there's a massive effort to normalize this. You see the New York Times column say, well, the Trump people have a case. You see the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the United States, saying, well, they're right about some things. You see reporters with Jason Miller in the Fort Des Moines Hotel. Reminds me of a bunch of German reporters in some Munich bar in 1935 saying, hey, Goring, he was an entertaining guy. I tell you what, he had some great stories. Nothing is normal about this at all. And you watched his speech last night. It was completely unhinged. And what I am obsessed with is stop treating him like he is a normal candidate, that this is some kind of Bob Dole, Mitt Romney. This is really not, Ari.
You treated Bob Dole like crap, and you treated Mitt Romney like crap. You brought up binders full of women, his dogs on his car. You took the most decent guy you could ever possibly meet, and you purposely, willfully, wantonly destroyed him. And Harry Reid, the late Harry Reid, one of the most despicable characters in all of American politics, went to the Senate floor and said, Mitt Romney doesn't pay his taxes. And when he was asked about it, he said, well, don't ask me, ask Mitt Romney. And years later, he's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But we won, didn't we? The scumbaggery has no end here. But we can't treat Donald Trump like a regular candidate? Because he's too much of a threat, right? Because democracy is on the line, right? Because we will cease to exist if he wins, right? How many more ways are we going to be told that MSNBC is absolutely, and so is CNN, and I believe the New York Times and others as well, are pushing a doctrine that is attempting to find somebody to engage in the unthinkable? I'm going to get yelled at for noticing what they're saying. I'm going to get emails. I am going to have my radio people saying, Tony, I'm noticing what they're saying. Where else does it go? What is the natural conclusion of the horror show that they're putting out there? And they get to do it with reckless abandon. They get sponsored for it. They get to engage this conversation that is, in every way, a conversation about violence. A conversation begging someone to do something unthinkable. Wasn't it Bongino? Wasn't it Dan who had brought this up a couple months ago, which is funny because he's not the first person I'd ever heard bring this up. It was my co-host from Eat, Drink, Smoke, Fingers Malloy, was the first person who I ever heard bring this up. And so I have been, over the last couple of months, trying to find the places and the spots where this is obviously the conversation, but it's happening underneath. And just this 1-2 punch of, or actually 1-2-3 punch from Joy Reid, from Vice President Harris, and from James Carville, is just a great primer to what it is we're seeing. If you have a political enemy, they should be treated indeed as a political enemy. You should be engaged in a conversation about the data, a conversation about the policy. These should be the things. Putting out there a theory that, if you elect this person, everything's going to be destroyed, wouldn't that be a shame? That is a whole different thing. Now, on the political right, we, of course, have been dealing with the fact that the political left has been engaged in this kind of talk, not recently, but for the past 25 years. And you can go earlier than that, but let's just start with the election of George W. Bush. The Supreme Court didn't go their way, and they lost their minds, and they've never recovered. The court didn't do what they wanted the court to do, and of course the courts do what the left says to do. This is how it was been built and designed, and it didn't happen. They lost their you-know-what. They lost it. They completely fell down and fell apart. And they've never recovered. And the political right has watched as the venom has only grown. Paul Ryan is going to push grandma off a cliff. I mentioned Mitt Romney. Sarah Palin, anyone? And then, of course, the coup de grace. Trump. And I'm not a Trump guy. I mean, if he's a nominee, I'm voting for him. Right? I'm not crazed. It's just... policy-wise, I like. Everything else, I don't. Because I don't like the idea that only one person can do the thing. I think multiple people can do the things. You got to take the lessons and then apply them. What are the lessons? It's the idea of saying out loud, look at what they're doing. Don't let them do that. That's one of the lessons. Trump did that better than anybody. And people still can't figure out why he's so attractive to so many across the country. All the other things about Trump and madness and craziness and statements, that could be very true. But look what he did over here. Do you not want to recognize how valuable and important that was? This is what we're seeing from the political left. And I want to say very specifically from MSNBC. This is how I see it. And I don't think I'm alone in seeing that there is an aggressive call to somehow not treating Trump like any other candidate, trying to scare people into, if this happens, we're all doomed, and then giving it a little bit of a wink, right? If I could wink, I would wink. I can't wink. I don't know. I wasn't born with that feature. I was born with other features. You're welcome, ladies. But I can't wink. But every day it looks like they're winking. You guys know. You understand what we're saying. And nobody says, this has to stop. disagree on policy, don't like the guy. But this has to stop. So let me say, not that I'm the first, but at least put me in one of what should be many. What you're doing, MSNBC and CNN, is really dangerous and is absolutely something that America should be opposed to. Stop doing this. Because you know you're doing it. Stop. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. Well, I'll tell you what, kitten. It is still total radio silence from Governor Eric Holcomb of Indiana talking about Texas. Nothing. No comments. Do you support Texas and believe in their right to protect and defend the state of Texas? Yes or no? We're waiting to hear it. I'm Tony Katz.
This is back east. There are very powerful people who want to keep you out.
I know they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way. So, this conversation never happened.
This is crazy, though. They should want me. I'm a great candidate. People love me. These people are corrupt.
Well, maybe you're right.
This story is nuts. This story about Kari Lake and the recording where the Arizona GOP chair, DeWitt is his last name, is basically trying to bribe her out of running for Senate. The story is nuts. When the story first came out, was it yesterday or the day before? I swear to you, I thought it was fake. In classic Tony Katz fashion, I'm like, I'm going to hold off a touch. Just a scotch. Can we please? There's the recording. Because Kari Lake recorded the conversation, and now DeWitt is saying, whoa, she is editing this thing 12 ways from Sunday. We worked together. She was an employee there. The thing is nuts. What I cannot make hide nor hair of is why is it that people are freaked out by this? I'm not saying that it is moral or decent, and I'm not saying you wouldn't remove your Republican chairman because of it, or any chairman. I'm saying this is politics, right? Doesn't this happen all the time? Tony Katz at Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. Kari Lake, a former anchor, TV anchor, then ran for governor in Arizona and should have won that race. Should have won that race, lost that race. Kari Lake has since been the right-wing poster child for sure. All Trump all the time, unrelenting and all that. And I thought in the campaign that actually helped. I was surprised to see her lose to Katie Hobbs, who is a child, who would not debate, who would not talk. And when she talks, as has been described, she sounds like a Muppet. And I'm not talking about it in the cool Roy Kent way. I like Muppets. No, that's a terrible Roy Kent. I'm talking about she sounds like a Muppet. But Kari Lake has never once engaged, in my view, any level of rational moderation to a conversation. Even if we are to agree on the subject, it's the presentation. She's sometimes you don't have to prove you're tough. Sometimes you just do the thing. I always get the vibe that she's trying to prove it. That's a personal take of mine. So the argument is that the Arizona GOP chairman, Jeff DeWitt is his name, attempted to bribe Kari Lake to get her out of the race. And the audio I just shared with you is just some of that audio where there's people got a lot of money and they want to make things happen. And you heard Kari Lake say, these people should want me. I'm a great candidate. People love me. And she actually says, so what do they want? What do they want me to do?
So what do they want? What do they want me to do?
You want me to stay out for 2 years? Why? Let me tell you what I can offer you. The ask I got today from back east was, it has to stay between us. Is there any companies out there or something that could just put her on the payroll and give her, to keep her out? And I said, well, what are you willing to do? Like, whatever we need to do.
I'm not willing to accept that. And I'm going to be the biggest pain in these people's ass. And go back and tell them that. I'm running, and I'm going to be the biggest pain in their ass.
And I'm willing to tell them that.
And they're going to have to kill me to stop me.
Is there a number at which
I can be bought?
not be bought?
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. A billion, no. This is not about money. This is about our country.
Now, I'm actually convinced that at that moment, Kari Lake knew she was going to make this audio public, and that was going in there. And DeWitt actually is like, hey, if I could give you a counter.
I actually wish you'd just give me a counter offer this big. Give me a counter.
I can't be bought.
That is some damning stuff. The offer via the Arizona GOP chair to get you not to run. The GOP chair states that this is edited. Put out a statement. I said things I regret, but I realized when hearing Lake's recording that I was set up. I believe she orchestrated this entire situation to have control over the state party, and it is obvious from the recording that she crafted her performance responses with the knowledge that she was recording it, including to use this recording later to portray herself as a hero in her own story. I believe that's absolutely true. I want to say that about Kari Lake now. She knew she was recording it. She knew how she was going to answer it. She knew how it was going to play. It doesn't change the fact that you offered her money from outside sources to stay out of the race. So two things can be true at the same time. And for people who are supporters of Kari Lake, they're going to be like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Use their game against them. We love that stuff. Don't just take it lying down. Punch them directly in the face, cost them their job. Screw the establishment right on. Absolutely. Here's the part that is kind of boggling the mind. It's you, it's me, it's the Barstool. Can I ask a question? Doesn't this happen all the time? Doesn't this happen all the time? Hey, Tommy, listen, we're going to run so-and-so, and that's the candidate we think has the best shot, so we're going to need you to step out of this. Look, we got a position for you over here. You do this for 2 years, do this for 4 years, and then we'll get you back in there. And then you got to decide whether or not you would do that, whether you're going to play ball. There's been conversations over the last years. You got 900 people run for president. Can't a Republican chairman get a couple of these people out of the race? It's time for you to sit down. Isn't that exactly what Ronna McDaniel is doing right now? Right now to Nikki Haley? Isn't it? Hold on a second. I've got the audio. I've got it. I know I do. Hold on, let me find it. It's not every day I have to look up Ronna McDaniel. You know, I try not to. I try not to do. There it is. Didn't she say? I don't. Here it is. It's right here.
Well, one thing I will say about the whole field of candidates that have run for president on our side, I commend them. They've been great. This has been a great contest, but I think there's some history that was made tonight. We have never had a nominee in our party that has won without winning winning either Iowa or New Hampshire. Donald Trump is the first ever to win both. I'm looking at the math and the path going forward, and I don't see it for Nikki Haley. I think she's run a great campaign, but I do think there is a message that's coming out from the voters, which is very clear. We need to unite around our eventual nominee, which is going to be Donald Trump, and we need to make sure we beat Joe Biden.
That's the RNC chairwoman telling Nikki Haley to sit down. These things happen all the time. It doesn't usually happen with an offer of cash. Usually happens with a job. Hey, you're going to be vice president. Just get in line. Now, can we nip something in the bud? Can we just put an end to a conversation really quick? It is so not going to be Nikki Haley, who is the VP for Trump. Oh, no. Elise Stefanik is more probable, and it won't be her. I think the conventional wisdom that it's Tim Scott makes absolute incredible sense. Incredible sense that it is the senator from South Carolina. And if I could be so bold, it's because he's the most like Mike Pence. Oh, someone's going to take that as an insult, and then someone's going to say, well, wait a second. There's a point. Tim Scott is an unbelievable number 2. His conversations about faith, his conversations about scripture, conversation about humble background and beginning, who sees it as a value to be supportive of the number one guy, sees that as important. The very concept of, wait for it, servant leadership. This has always been my argument about Mike Pence, who's always been very, very nice to me personally and professionally. I'm not mad at the guy. I don't think he's a traitor by any stretch of the imagination. But I stated that he shouldn't run for president, and I stated that he couldn't get the nomination. And the reasons were quite clear. America doesn't want what he has to offer. But the other problem is that his entire modus operandi, his own purpose statement, is about the very idea of service to others. That concept of servant leadership. He's the guy who should be the number 2. I said that, it was DeSantis or somebody else, that Mike Pence is going to be the most perfect Secretary of State there is. Perfect. There is no one better at delivering the message of America and won't go off script. And I say that knowing that in a very super, super rare in this campaign, Pence did go off script. If you remember that in some of the debates, it was like, that's not him. We're Indiana. We know that's not him. I don't know what's going on there. I thought it was super weird. But he's not built to be a number 1. And I am not a believer that Tim Scott is either. I happen to like Tim Scott. I happen to like Tim Scott quite a bit. And I can see how that works. I can see how Tim Scott is an absolute excellent pick. It makes sense in a lot of ways. We can discuss who else we think it might be. But going back to this story, this guy, Jeff DeWitt, says, look, she edited this audio. She knew she was recording it. And I know she threatened me. She said she's got more audio. So to spare my family and so I can get back to my business, because I don't get paid to be the chairman of the Republican Party of Arizona, I'm leaving. Throwing it back at her. Of course she recorded it. I mean, we know that. Of course she knew what she was going to say. And of course she spun it to her advantage. You offered her money to get out of the race. She's well within her rights to say, you offered me money to get out of a race. That's going to help her raise money and possibly win the race. I just think that people who are stunned by this, I've always assumed that this is exactly what's happening. I've interviewed high level, I've consulted to some levels, but I've never been an elected official at those levels. Or a player in terms of as a candidate. I assume that's the way it goes. It shouldn't go that way? Okay, but it does. And I don't know why everybody is so clutching their pearls and surprised. That's a weird part to me. Like, they're amazed by this. I don't know what's to be amazed by. I always thought that this was the way. I'm not cynical, just honest. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today. So just when you think you have a basic understanding of where the economy is, that you saw inflation trend down and then you saw it pick back up, the consumer price index at 3.9%, that is not the target rate of 2% that the Federal Reserve is looking for, that's double, kitten, double where the Federal Reserve wants to be. You're like, okay, things are not going so great. And then you take a general mood that exists within the country. This general mood of things are not good. We are not in a happy, strong place. This economy is problematic and dangerous and has no end in sight from being problematic and dangerous. When you saw the New Hampshire primaries take place, of course, they asked people, hey, what is your thought on this? And what is your thought on that? This was CBS News, and this was what they found out.
Yeah, so people are really bummed out about the economy here in New Hampshire, even if the overall big picture numbers are going in the right direction. And even if people's own personal experiences in general are going okay, there's a lot of gloom. And one of the reasons is food prices, for example, generally going up. And we talked to a bunch of people outside of a grocery store in Derry, New Hampshire. We couldn't find anybody feeling good about the economy. And that's just human nature. Psychologically, you go into a store, if you're paying more for items that you get every week, that really sticks with you. It really annoys you. It gets you down. People were upset about it. And so are they making it? Yeah, they're making it. But are they bothered by the fact that frozen OJ has gone up double digits and that steak on Friday is up double digits? Absolutely. And that's really driving people's perspective on things.
So that was out of California. I'm Tony Katz. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Dr. Matt Will joins us, economist at the University of Indianapolis, because with that backdrop, this was today's news, Dr. Will. The U.S. economy grew faster than expected. You're talking about a GDP, gross domestic product, of 3.3%, which in any economy or an average economy, we'd say that's just fine. That's some solid growth. But we saw inflation tick back up. There are now indicators that inflation is ticking back down. Talk to me about the numbers. What do they say?
Oh, goodness. There's so much to cover here. Let me first of all say that this is a good number. There's a lot of good numbers in this report. I am not going to say that there's any, well, there are a few things that are concerning to me, but overall 3.3 is great. But why is it down? That's the most important thing. And let me say what the headline should be. The headline should be Biden is losing the war on the economy, because the economy is looking good, but not because of Biden. The number one thing in this report that causes the GDP to go up is lower inflation. Now, right before we went on the air, you mentioned to me, well, the other reports say it's double what it should be, and you just mentioned that. That's true, but in this report says that the inflation last quarter was 1.5%. That's dramatically lower than what we were talking about just a couple weeks ago and below the target for the Fed. That's because there's different inflation reports coming out of the government. This one contradicts the others. This one says inflation is good. So that's one factor. You want me to go into the other ones? You want to chat for the inflation?
You have to go into all of them. There is no level of wonkification that we can't walk down, because this gets confusing. You know, how government agencies and others manipulate data to their benefit, as opposed to what we know when we're the people, just like you saw from that CBS reporting, at the store seeing meat being double in price and other things being double in price.
Well, according to this report, not the CPI, not the PPI, not the CPE, all the other ones, the same inflation still double what it should be. This one says it's down. So in that respect, Biden is losing the war because Powell is winning the war. Powell's trying to reduce inflation and Biden's trying to increase it from spending. The second bad thing is that the GDP is up because government spending is up 4.3% for the year. That is not a good reason for government, for the GDP to go up, is because government's spending more money. Next, consumer spending is up 2.8% in this report. That's below the national average of the GDP, but it's pulling, it's causing some juice in the economy. That's not a good thing. Why is it bad? Because credit card debt, highest spending in history. According to the top banks in the country, highest delinquency that we've seen in recent memory. Third reason, and this GDP report says it, people are saving less money. We've talked about this before. Again, in the fourth quarter, people are dipping into their savings to spend money. And this great holiday season that everyone was bragging about, the fourth quarter was worse than the third quarter as far as holiday spending.
Now it gets stupid. Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis, all we heard in fourth quarter spend was about how people were spending more, but no one answered the question, were they spending more and getting more? Or were they spending more for the average things that they were going to buy? So they bought less, but they spent more to actually get less. That question never got fully answered. But I want to go back to a little bit of what you were getting into there. The whole winning the war conversation. If the fight is between Biden and Powell, Biden spending versus and those programs that engage spending versus Powell working the interest rates.
And Powell, also Biden versus capitalism. I want to talk about that too.
This is exactly where I was going to go. Don't steal my thunder, sir. That's just rude.
Apologies.
It is that we're the ones who end up losing, because in this conversation, this almost conversation in the ether about where the economy is, I don't mind a 3.3 GDP. I'd be very happy if that showed the country is really starting to kick. 3.3 is a wonderful number for a country with the economic output of the United States. But the American people aren't feeling any of this. We're still stuck in it. We still see the closings. We see the higher rents, for example, and what that's doing to the restaurant industry, closing people out, the higher labor costs. Even if you can get people to show up, you're paying the higher labor costs, even though they don't always show up. That is putting the squeeze on hospitality. We're seeing less. Therefore, you're seeing more crowding in those places, those costs going up. We're taking the hit on every side, yet Wall Street seems to want to play a game of things are great. So talk to me about the part two of this, which is Biden versus capitalism.
Well, the reason Wall Street sees things as great is because Wall Street is shifting their focus away from Washington, which I've said for years they need to do. Stop looking at Washington and look at Main Street, look at manufacturing. Private investment was up 10% in the third quarter. That's an amazing amount. Biden has nothing to do with private investment. In fact, he tries to punish companies. He tries to punish them for reinvesting their money. He wants to increase their taxes. He wants to punish them for trying to do stock buybacks. He wants to destroy capitalism, but capitalism says, no, we're going to do AI. We're going to reinvent our companies. We're going to invest. In addition, all the restrictions he's putting on businesses, exports were up 6.3% in the fourth quarter. So capitalism is saying, here, Biden, you're trying to harm us, ban our business from exporting, regulate us more. We're going to export more. We're going to invest more. So Wall Street's looking to itself and companies and saying, look, we're doing good things. We're growing the economy. They're winning the battle against Biden. Powell is winning the battle against Biden. For the American consumer, we're lucky Biden is losing most of the battles. But as you said, you go to the store, you're still getting less for the same dollar.
Let's talk where we are losing the battle, where the American consumer is clearly losing the battle, and you brought it up earlier. Third quarter credit card debt was $1.08 trillion. Now, I have not seen yet data on fourth quarter credit card debt, but you started bringing up the concept of defaults, talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. Can you talk to me about the data you're seeing about defaults? Do we have data on fourth quarter debt? And at what moment, well, if that moment hasn't already come, are people ringing the bell saying this is completely unsustainable? The crash is coming, if not here.
Well, you know what? We don't have the data because the banks aren't releasing it. They released anecdotal information. So the top 4 banks in the country said they have seen record level of delinquencies in credit card and debt payments that occurred in the fourth quarter. So we're waiting for the actual numbers on that. But I wonder if they're just afraid to tell us because it's that bad. And then this report does tell us that we're saving less money. The savings rate dropped 0.2%. We're saving less money. And again, anecdotal from the big banks, because they haven't released the actual numbers, they say highest credit card debt in history, higher delinquencies than we've seen, savings rates below pre-pandemic levels. All of those things point to what you just said, Tony, that the consumer is credit crunched, which we've talked about the credit crunch before. They're strapped for money. They're dipping into their savings just to make ends meet on a daily basis.
If the consumer is under a credit crunch, and we have discussed this in multiple ways. So, for example, you want to go buy a used car. but the bank will not lend you money to buy a used car because they're concerned of your ability to pay it back. And then when you go to the used car lot, they don't even exist anymore because they weren't able to get loans to purchase vehicles from the auction because they feared that the consumer coming to the now empty lot wouldn't be able to pay back the loan. So it hit in both ways. It would seem to me, a novice, Dr. Matt Will, that a credit crunch would be disastrous for everybody on Wall Street and Midwest Main Street. Do I have this wrong?
Okay, you're kind of naive to say you're naive. That is incorrect. You described it very well. That's exactly what what's happening right now. And the credit crunch, to go a little bit further, is we have not yet seen the volume of defaults rolling into, let's say, commercial real estate. Think of all those empty office buildings in the downtown in a big city. Those office buildings were on lease for a long time. People are not going back to work into the office. They are, but not as much. It's not going to go back to pre-pandemic level. So what if you've loaned money for someone to buy a building? They're going to default on that. And we're starting to see those default rates increase. So the next big tsunami coming is the commercial real estate credit card default. And that's going to be the next iteration of the crunch. And that's
real estate credit default. So it was, I think the Wall Street Journal had a piece about this because we did discuss it. There's going to be, before 2028, a tremendous amount, Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis, of loans that come to maturity. And when those loans come to maturity and you can't refinance at a better rate or even the same rate, you're going to be paying far more than you bought that property for. There are going to be a fair amount of people more than convinced to give up the property, considering that people still aren't coming back to the office in numbers that make those properties worthwhile. How does the commercial real estate market and that impending, coming, clearly looming issue affect us on Midwest Main Street?
We saw it in March. Remember the bank crisis we talked about? And I said, it's not going away. It's just going down a little bit. We're just letting it, it's going to sleep, but it's going to rear its ugly head. Most of the loans made by local regional banks are commercial loans. They sell their mortgages. They don't keep your mortgage. They sell it to somebody else. So the loans on their books are these long-term commercial loans. And when those things come due, as you just mentioned in the report you stated, those things are going to cause the banks to have a crisis. And I believe that the bank crisis is not yet gone. And I keep talking about this in my speeches because, people say, oh, March, it was here, it was massive, it was fixed. No, it was just subdued for a moment. It will be back.
And what does it look like when it's back? How do we see it? Like, what is the indicator for people? I don't mean to ask a question on a question. What's the indicator for the layman where they go, yep, time to hunker it all down?
When your regional banks go bankrupt. Now, I'm not predicting that. There are solid regional banks, okay? We've mentioned that before. The regional banks, especially in Indiana, are fantastically safe from interest rate risk. But where they're not safe from is default risk, which means if someone doesn't pay back their loan.
But wouldn't that argument also apply to large banks? You could say, well, they've got more cash, so they have a safer position, but they also deal with bigger loans. One could ostensibly argue. So doesn't the problem also apply there?
It does, but not as much, because the regional banks are more on a percentage basis. Most of their portfolio is in local, regional construction, commercial loans. The national banks have much more. They have bonds to Coca-Cola or bonds to IBM. So they have a different portfolio structure, but all those local banks, your hospitals, your apartment complexes, they go to the local bank to get those loans. And so that's why there's more exposure to the regional and local banks.
Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. I appreciate taking the time to be with us. More is coming up. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today. One wonders what it is that Governor Eric Holcomb is going to do. You have governor after governor after governor after governor supporting Governor Greg Abbott of Texas in this fight about the border and border security. You've got Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia. You've got Governor Gianforte of Montana, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, all saying that they stand with Governor Greg Abbott. Now, a lot of people think that this is Greg Abbott defying the Supreme Court. It's not. The Supreme Court case was about whether or not Texas can stop Customs and Border Patrol, really the federal government, from getting rid of this razor wire that Texas put out. It was a 5-4 decision saying no, the state cannot stop the federal government from making these changes. And I've argued I understand the basic philosophy. Isn't it the philosophy that the president decides immigration policy? And if you're putting up this wire, you are preventing the policy that he has in place, which is really an admission of the kind of horrible policy that he's got in place. There's nothing that says that the governor is supposed to just lay down and take the abuse of his state and not defend it and not protect it from what clearly can be seen as an invasion. You don't have to be wearing the same uniform. You have single able-bodied men coming across the border legally and illegally. Yes, you can call it an invasion. Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. He cited it in his letter. You've heard me talk about it a million times. What is Governor Eric Holcomb going to do? Is he going to side with Governor Greg Abbott? Or is he going to stay silent? Is the governor of Indiana going to stay quiet? Because this issue is an issue for everybody. This is a nationwide issue. It belongs to all of us. I know he was on a road trip to Canada trying to bring some business. I don't have any issue with that. But silence on this? I wonder if he'll be silent when 10,000 illegal immigrants are dropped off in Indianapolis and Bloomington and Muncie. I wonder if he'll be silent at that moment. I'm hoping he's not. I'm hoping he will come out in favor of what Greg Abbott is doing so we finally get enough pressure on the administration and Congress to get policy that makes sense and keeps the country safe and does put America first. Find everything at TonyKatz.com tomorrow, everyone. Take care.